welcome to Data Dialogues, where we get to interview leaders in the data space. We're super excited to have Alessandro with us. Alessandro has been a practitioner for a long time, leading teams at Preply and Timeform, and now using his wealth of experience, he's moving over to the consultancy side. And having recently consulted with companies like MoonPay and now Uno Bravo, uh, I'm excited to catch up with Alessandro. Bringing the opinions of a practitioner is always very important. So, welcome to the show, Alessandro.
Thank you. Great pleasure to be here. And thanks for
Uh,
having me.
of course, we've actually spoken on LinkedIn and email briefly, but we've never spoken face to face. So, really looking forward to this conversation.
Likewise.
And you are calling in from Barcelona, is that correct?
Indeed, that's my apartment in Barcelona I'm calling from.
I love that. In the last few years, we've seen, for a while, data was, very much a New York and, San Francisco, Silicon Valley sort of type of engagement. And we've just now started to see sort of data conferences happen globally. In London, you have Big Data London and, in sort of Barcelona, if I remember correct, Data Council did an event there a few years ago.
Oh, yeah, I
So,
participated. Yeah, I'm familiar
uh,
with what's his name, the organizer. Great guy.
Pete, yeah.
Pete, there you go. Yeah, yeah, great guy. I remember.
Uh, So,
Mhm.
would love to just hear about what's happening in the UK and sort of Europe ecosystem when it comes to data. We always, sort of speak about America and what's happening over there. We'd love to kind of just get your thoughts on, the sort of state of the UK and Europe.
Okay. Well, I can speak from a particular experience, which is the experience in Barcelona. Barcelona became interesting for a lot of tech companies for two reasons. Many companies decided to open their hubs here. That's the case of King, for example, or Preply opened their headquarters here, and many more. The travel park, you have like very healthy bunch of scale-ups, which makes for a really nice scene. I guess there are multiple reasons for it. Like probably the main one is that like setting up an operation in Barcelona is probably cheaper for the company, but also it is a very attractive place to get people to relocate to. So this trend started before the pandemic, and probably that's where it reached their height. Then, of course, with the pandemic and all the lockdown, it's been a little bit more quiet on the new company side. Some have dropped offices altogether. Some are moving towards full remote uh, situations. But what it looks like is that we are slowly converging again towards hybrid working, and people are realizing, that in-person interaction makes a huge difference. So hopefully we will see flourishing again this sort of scene here in Barcelona. For the
And
moment, on the other hand, the people are working remotely, and that is changed things greatly. There are fundamentally two markets. There is like the Spanish market, and I guess this is probably true for many other countries in Europe, for France, for Italy, maybe not as much for the UK since it's very international, but there are two markets. There is like the local market and there is an international market.
yes,
And this kind of creating a bit of disparity as well among people. So if you have good English, you have international experience, you probably can get access to a different kind of companies
mm,
that probably provide more beautiful challenges and
yeah,
also higher compensation. Yeah, so there's kind of a
yeah.
split double market here in Europe at the moment.
And are you seeing that companies are investing in Barcelona, especially in the data side? Is this more from the perspective of, offices and sort of building teams over there, or they're also interested in the Spanish market and, what's the sort of buying appetite
Mm.
of like data solutions in the region?
Yeah, I think like there is definitely a prominence of the first half you mentioned, like
Yeah.
companies
Over.
setting up their offices here and do a lot of recruitment here. There's a lot of like quality um, workers out here that are probably eager to join international environments, so they're a lot more flexible. And as I was saying, it's easier to get to people to relocate to Barcelona than to Iceland, you know.
Yeah.
But also, like Spanish becomes fairly, Spain becomes, and all south of Europe is fairly strategic market. If you put it all together, you know, like
Yeah.
maybe each country is not as important, but like
Yeah.
many companies have a quite an aggressive market penetration strategy at the moment. You can see like Snowflake are pushing really hard, Amazon, Google are pushing really hard, Databricks, all the
Yeah.
big players. I'm trying to get a hold of the Spanish market, especially Barcelona, because there's a lot of important players here.
And if you have one piece of advice, not for obviously the Snowflakes and Databricks and AWSs, which have, you know, $1 billion, when if you're talking about like other sort of vendors who are looking
Hmm.
to go crack in there, is there one kind of tippy sort of advice you would give to anyone on the vendor side who's looking to break into the region?
Oh, that's such a very good question. That is probably not specific to this region, but it's more like a generic rule when it gets to data products, to data vendors, is that unfortunately they all come across as quite indifferentiated, or
Mm,
better, their value proposition not always tends to be clear. I'm
yeah,
getting like, I don't want to say hundreds, but probably yes, hundreds of LinkedIn messaging from vendors in the data space, being
yeah,
like storage solutions or processing engine or BI solutions, and
yeah,
they all come across as the same. They
yeah.
all make like promises, such as like very
Become data
cliche
driven
promises.
in 6 clicks.
There you go. Yeah, no, insights at your fingertips and all of that. So every lone wolf in the market, such as myself, would know that that is not true.
Yes.
And I would also know that there is plenty of very powerful, very established tools on the
Yeah,
market. So if you want me to reach out to you, like you really need to stand out.
yeah,
If you wanted to answer your email, you really need to stand out and give me one reason why I should talk to you.
yeah.
The only last company that really um, raised my interest right away, that was Monte Carlo. You're familiar with Monte Carlo data
Ex
observability? Because Monte Carlo was actually doing something new.
yeah,
Nobody heard of anything like it to that point. It was like yeah, you could hear about data observability, but it tended to be a lot more of a in-house effort.
okay.
Whereas like they just came and the proposition was super clear.
Yeah,
And also they had very low barriers at the entrance. So
yeah,
fundamentally, it's a tool that you set up a connection
yeah,
and it works out of the box.
yeah,
Then if you want to make the most out of it, yes, you're going to have to do some work, some configurations, and to adapt it to your specific use cases. But
yeah.
like the value that you get from it by switching a button was very clear. So between these two reasons, number one, just different, stands out.
Yes.
Number two, I don't have to divert resources from my team to try it out and implement it. So that was like a very clear success story for me. We're still
Incredible.
using
And
it definitely.
uh, is this the first time you bought an observability platform?
Yes, that would have been like probably 3, 4 years ago.
Yeah.
But I have to admit, back in my days at Typeform, my good friend David Apple was the VP of Customer Success. Introduced me to a friend of his who was creating this very seed startup and they wanted to look at it. That was Bar Moses, CEO of Monte
Yeah.
Carlo. She reached out to me to try to validate market and product fit. She had an idea. She was just getting started with it.
Yes.
I remember having a call with her and sharing. my view and sharing my feedback over idea and thinking, hey, this is interesting, nobody does it. And then life goes on, and 4 years later, I just find out they're a unicorn.
Yeah.
Not only, but I just found out that several friends in other companies that I knew had joined our team. So I had a few friends at Segment that joined Monte Carlo. I had a few friends in other places, and I say, wait a minute, this is big.
Yeah.
So I reached out to them. They were extremely accommodating. It was a moment that they were expanding, so they were eager to validate their product on use cases, and so we implemented it properly right away. And the
Yeah.
experience was very positive, actually. Yeah.
I love that. Uh, Talking about, sort of emerging categories, everyone understands that, ingestion and warehousing and modeling and, BI, that's been the sort of story for a long time. Observability has been very interesting, right, as an emerging category, and it's been emerging for a few years, but, it's still something which, lots of sort of talk and focus on. What are some of the other categories which, you're looking at, or some of the newer categories which potentially could be interesting?
Okay. I would say the latest, novelties. We have tools such as DBT on the market.
Yeah.
Well, DBT now we cannot call it a novelty anymore. It's been around for a
Sure.
few years already, but like it's really establishing itself as a standard for analytics engineering. The whole idea of analytics engineering is new. We called it
Yeah.
business intelligence back in my day. Now,
Yeah.
business intelligence is not cool anymore. We have to call it analytics engineering, right?
Yeah.
But on one hand, I really like the idea of putting a layer on top of a SQL and allowing for doing like a more of a development approach, like,
Right.
software development approach to data warehousing. So I love
Yeah.
that. I love that there is testing. I love that you have continuous integration. You have pull requests. You're integrating with Git. That
Yeah.
kind of stuff is really exciting. It's also a bit scary though. It needs to be used with a fair bit of responsibility, since it allows you to do a lot of abstraction and functions that call macros, that call functions, that call macros. So
Yeah.
it's easy to lose sight of what actually is happening down within the database, which
Yeah.
can lead to outrageous costs and governance nightmares, maybe making things harder to maintain at some point. But yeah, super excited tool, just needs to be used with care and with best practices. So that is definitely the space. A second space that is interesting, I think we are starting to see some movement on the coordination side of things. Um, it's not the first vendor that comes to me, early startups that have an interested idea. There's a tool called Orchestra. Check it out. I think
Is
it's
this
just telling you
is
that
this
try
is
it
this
out at the
more
moment.
is this more on the orchestration side? So, competing with the Airflows and Daxters, or is this something new?
Correct, correct. Like it's basically somebody who finally figured that running Airflow is very complex.
Sure.
It's difficult to set up. It's technical. Well, um, from a data engineer or a developer, it's not really that difficult. An analytics engineer tends to have a different set of skill. These
Yes.
people are more closer to the business, closer to the KPIs, closer to the metrics. They can do exceptionally good modeling and data wrangling within a data warehouse,
Yeah.
but like they tend to be not as technical. So to run tools such as Airflow at scale is a big overhead. Sometimes it feels
Yeah.
like a lot of an overkill,
Yeah.
because if you only want to do scheduling and handle your dependencies and you know trigger your jobs, probably you don't need a tool that is as technical.
Yeah.
Whereas in the DBT world, DBT does not allow for good scheduling, and especially does not allow to coordinate ingestion with
Mm.
transformation. It's only focused on the transformation.
Yep.
So I've seen Orchestra, and like another tool reached out to me last week. I don't remember that name, unfortunately. But somebody who are trying to go back to an old paradigm that was
Mm.
more like coming from the drag and drop kind of school,
Yep.
and make it simpler. to schedule things again. And I think this
Mm.
is also a very interesting trend. Uh, well, back in my day, we had tools, ETL tools, like such as Pentaho Kettle or business object data integration. Sorry, I'm
Yeah.
old. You got me.
Yeah.
Like, it's not that old. I mean, we are talking 15 years ago. We're not talking 30 years ago. And
Yeah,
those were
exactly.
tools that would allow a data analyst or a business analyst with zero IT skills, zero computer science skill to build their pipelines
Yeah.
in a reliable way, in a structured way, handling the dependencies and doing everything that Airflow does. And now this space got extremely technical, and possibly not everybody needs it. The trade-off is not worth it for everyone.
Yeah.
You know, uh, so like that's another piece. Um,
Uh, are you seeing, it's really interesting that you're mentioning, very, very core data engineering, right? It's the DBT space plays in the space of modeling using software engineering best practices. Orchestration in some ways, people have always questioned, is this, if you use sort of DBT cloud, you have an orchestrator inbuilt, right? That is sort of DBT jobs. And, you know, so it is a lot of, in some ways it's even for like 5x, we look at modeling and orchestration as one sort of product, right? It's a macro product, but it's kind of one big piece. There's, a third sort of component to it, which people are now calling the semantic layer.
oh yeah,
Um,
big deal. I was gonna
and
get there.
so would love to, hear your thoughts. I know it's something you've been tracking for a while and would love to
Oh
see
yeah,
how you think it integrates.
indeed. Like I am a huge supporter of semantic layers, um, and fundamentally, the case for it is data governance. If I have to see the two greatest point of failure in all that range of startups that reach out to me and build a data ecosystem that does not work at one scale, and they find themselves forced to scrap it and restart over again. The two single point of failure are data governance and data accessibility.
Mhm.
Those kind of situations in which maybe you built a fairly good data warehouse, fairly well modeled, but then you used a traditional BI tool such as Tableau or ClickView. I mean, they're not bad tools. They're great, amazing tools when used with extremely care. But the problem is that when you have to define key performance indicators, and I'm talking like any key performance indicator, even the most important one, the ones that you report to investors, the definition of these KPIs lives in each dashboard. So it's very hard to control and ensure that this definition is consistent across tens, hundreds of dashboards that are being built across the company. So the big issue I found in myself, even in companies that were fairly mature, not give you the name of this one because it's going to make them look bad, but I have been into a Series B due diligence in which like the potential investor asked like, so how many new customers did you have last month? And like five different people they gave five different numbers because they got them from five different dashboards. And each one of them was in principle a correct number, but it was just based on a different definition. So, and they were all, yeah, were formally correct, but it was extremely hard to guarantee that consistency.
Yeah.
So that's when a governance layer can come in and a semantic layer can come in. And so I am going to create a definition of new customers, right? And I am going to put this definition of the customer in a logical layer. And if I'm doing 100 dashboards, these 100 dashboards are going to drag and drop this concept from this logical layer. And therefore, it's the same definition across all of them. And if for whatever reason one day I decided to change it, I can make the change and the change will propagate across all the dashboards that I create.
Do you
Then
think?
people will have,
Oh, sorry, go on.
please,
After you.
oh no, then people will still have the possibility, the faculty on going in dashboard and tweaking these metrics and create their own mini source of truth, a version of the truth, and that it's inevitable. However, it makes it a lot easier to have like this common ground to maintain consistency, and also, we can use it to create a set of official dashboard. And again, these people, they have something to benchmark against and check their own dashboards against before making them public.
And do you think the semantic layer should be tied into BI, like the lookers of the world did with LookML? Is semantic layer an extension of the data modeling layer, or is it in some ways a separate layer like the cubes, right? Like, is it like DBT plus a semantic layer? Is it cube as a standalone product? Is it LookML as integrated into BI, or it could be any one of them? What's kind of your thought process there? And then kind of even going one level deeper, right? Who's doing the best job in semantic layers bit?
Yeah, I'm going to start with that. In my opinion, Looker are doing the best job in the semantic layer, and simply for one reason. It is not a semantic layer, it is not that valuable if it only covers data governance, but does not cover data accessibility.
Yeah.
I got extremely excited when I heard that people like DBT were creating their own semantic layer, when I heard that there were like tools such as Cube on the
Yeah.
market. So I got very excited about that too. Until I realized that these tools are still based and thought for batch processing. So they are not fit for online querying, meaning that they only solve half of the problem. Now, let me break it out to you because you're young, and again, I'm old, but this concept is not new. MicroStrategy had semantic layers 20 years ago. Business objects had semantic layers 20 years ago. Okay. The problem is that when tools such as QlikView and Tableau came on the market, databases were really slow. So like MicroStrategy worked, but was very slow. And people jumped on these new tools because they were in-memory tools, and so they were fast. So they realized what they jumped on the speed, but they didn't realize what they were losing. Okay. Meanwhile, this technology, I'm getting somewhere. Sorry, I'm taking a detour. This technology was like we got meanwhile like a distributed computing, we got Hadoop, and eventually we had Redshift, XSOL, and the first generation of columnar database, which then became the Snowflake and BigQuery of today. So now that we have faster data warehousing, the semantic layer, is finally enabled to bring all its value. However, what I've seen is that it takes two pieces, and that's when Looker has done it well. Also, maybe Power BI has done it well. I'm not as much of a fan, but like at least it's the same concept. Or even ThoughtSpot does it a lot better because fundamentally they have an SQL, a SQL engine on top of the semantic layer.
Yeah.
So you would allow an end user to drag and drop a few concepts, and this engine is capable of reading the content of the semantic layer, which also include a schema that tells you how the various tables, relate to each other.
Yeah.
And then on the fly, it can generate SQL, and it can generate calculations, and it also can generate joins. So this kind of online capability is what the other half. So right now, I see that the semantic layer of DBT, for instance, it's meeting the governance piece, but it's not delivering on the accessibility piece.
Mm.
Without that, you're still stuck into a world in which governance has improved. But if I'm an end user, if I'm a marketing person, if I'm a product person, if I'm the CEO, and I want to see, I don't know, a particular view of sales by country for a specific product, I have to go and ask somebody to build a dashboard for me.
Yeah.
And then it's a horrible bottleneck. And
Yeah.
so you're going to end up with those 200 dashboards that on which like you use it once and then it stays there forever and then it gets deprecated and then nobody maintains it. Then the data is wrong, right? So what I see the real value is having these two parts and having the end users to be faced like with this kind of pivot table interface. And they don't need to access a dashboard if they want a data point. They're just going to drag and drop and pull the specific data point and then scrap it. So that kind of like ongoing data exploration is the part that tools such as Looker and Power BI do very well. And I don't think the real value of a semantic layer can be harvested unless it's also uh, joined by this sort of functionality.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Um, what would you say to, if you look at sort of general adoption of the semantic layer, right?
Mm.
Observability in general has been a newer category. And again, like, although it has a lot of potential, still compared to your core layer, very, very low adoption. Semantic layer, we're talking about 0.1% of companies sort of using it, right? Like, what do you know, how do you see the adoption sort of going up in the next 6 to 18 months? And really, where do you think we're going to see adoption? Is this going to be, at the enterprise level, or semantic layer makes sense for your 1 to 10 person data teams, sort of
Mm.
50 to 1,000 person companies?
Well, okay, those are two very good questions. I'm gonna take the second one first.
Sure.
So the semantic layer, in my opinion, and what allows you to build a data product or a set the data product that you will not have to scrap a few years later to restart over, you know, because it's going to maintain the kind of governance. And also, when it's properly done, is the tool that is going to make your data accessible across the company. So it's going to save you thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars in data monkeys at scale. And by data monkey, I mean those poor people whose job is just pulling data for you because you're unable
Yeah.
to do it on your own. It's a sad reality that you serve very well. So I would see this maybe not for a 10 people company. I would love to see it in a 10 people company, but I see people starting to take the data warehousing seriously more on like a 100 to 200 people mark, maybe late seed or Series A. So definitely, my answer is as soon as possible they should be adopted. Now, why with the problem with semantic layers is I see adoption. I see two problems with it. Number one, I already elaborated on it. The current generic semantic layers or like standalone semantic layers only solve half of the problem. And I think to drive adoption, they would have to solve also the other half, which doesn't mean to have like a business intelligence front end that allows you to build charts and visualization. That's probably yet a step further, but like they would need the SQL engine that would allow me through any kind of interface that can be an API or can be anything else to say, hey, I want sales by country. And you're going to write the SQL for me, in which sales by country is based on decentralized definition. Right? So imagine when I'm, even within a data warehousing context, imagine that I want to build some aggregate table, like, the gold layer of our medallion layer, right? I want to build some aggregate table. How cool would it be if I could just, tell my semantic layer that I want to build a table with this and this metric broken down by this and this attribute. and
Yeah.
I wouldn't have to worry about the code and about governance. And I could build as many aggregates, as many tables as I want, because they would all be under the same standards of governance and data quality. It would be
Yeah.
incredible. But that's the piece that is missing, the engine, the querying engine. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think, yeah. So this makes it so that right now we don't have a whole value proposition. We have a half value proposition. And so this is one big problem. And the second big problem is that people who are supposed to implement such semantic layer are not the same people who receive the value from it. So who is receiving the value of a semantic layer? Those are data consumers across the org. Those are like, the marketing people, the product people, the leadership team, people who want to go query data and make sure this data is consistent. Whereas the semantic layer now is that we're proposing it to those kind of data engineers or analytics engineer, and they tell me, dude, but why do I have to store all this metric definition into this extra layer that I have to implement and I have to maintain when I can do just the same with code as we
Yeah.
always did and it always worked? And they're right. They're right. So I think, in my opinion, the value that today's semantic layers are bringing to the table, since does not cover the whole problem but cover only half, is not it's not like incremental enough to justify the effort that these people must make. So to cut a very long story short, the day semantic layers people will produce a semantic layer that works the way Lucas does, or the way Power BI does, or the way ThoughtSpot does. I say, meaning a layer that is also capable of generating query online, then that's when we're going to see it exploit. I really hope so.
Yeah.
Um, Looker are outsourcing, no, sorry, are opening now their semantic layer, and they're making it available to everyone. So I got very excited when I saw that, because you could probably point Tableau and have it to read it from the LookML layer.
Yeah.
So you will get like the best of the two worlds. You will get the
Yeah.
governance, you will get the flexibility, you will get the advanced uh, visualization capability that Looker is lacking. But it doesn't really quite seem to pick up yet. I don't really hear people talking about it. Did you hear
Yeah.
about it?
No, I didn't know it's actually been opened as yet. Has it?
I think they're in the process.
Yeah, because
I
you
would have
need
to
BI
check them
tools
if it's
to
already out there.
because you would need a BI tool to even be compatible with it, right? Like fundamentally,
Yeah,
a BI tool would run on top of the semantic engine.
yeah,
And that's, one of the things around the adoption of it, right? Like even like Looker, even like DBT's new tool, the adoption is just no one in the industry is adopting it, right? Like no vendors have actually said we're gonna go build on top of this. And that's the thing with semantic, whereas SQL is just, everyone it's very easy to basically, even if you have DocDB or a new sort of database, and it's very simple to basically go adopt, a dialect of SQL. The problem with, in some ways, the semantic layer is unless one wins, then, assuming your 4 or 5 semantic layers, each BI tool has to adopt each semantic layer because they don't work in quite the same way. And that becomes challenging from the side of vendors in terms of actually being able to like support multiple.
yes, I see what you mean. And yeah, also like it's adding a piece to the infrastructure. So like, why would I want to use Looker and then use another BI tool that I have to pay for, I have to maintain, I have to integrate? Like, then
Yeah,
I would probably use Looker altogether.
yeah,
Um, There's also like the ex-chief product officer and founder of Looker. Now they started their own venture with a tool called Omni. Don't know if you heard of it.
yeah.
I've
I
seen
think
it. It looks very interesting.
it's, what the advantage Google has is you can actually remove the semantic layer from Looker and build it into BigQuery. So you have BigQuery and now you actually have, the LookML layer on top of your warehouse. So
Okay.
then in which case it doesn't, it's not linked to your BI tool. It's just at your
Mm,
warehouse level, and then if that's supported by other BI tools, and you
mm.
can use the BigQuery certification program to be like, if you really work with BigQuery, in that case, you're working with, the sort of lookable semantic layer on BigQuery. And I think that strategy would then probably make sense. But again,
I
this
would
is
tend to agree. That is super interesting. Like I would see, if we did manage to get people excited about it, and if we did manage to achieve traction for semantic layers, like the future would be precisely that. We would have like a semantic layer that is decoupled from the BI tool, and it
yeah,
serves the BI tool as well as other multiple use cases. In
yeah,
all fairness, Looker already does that, um, because all the data in the semantic layer is not only available through their interface to build reports and dashboards, but it's also made available through an API.
yeah,
Uh, Adoption hasn't been as strong as I would have expected, but also because it requires a particular version of Looker, which is a bit more expensive. You need like the advanced data platform.
yeah,
But so things that we could do with it. I have an experience at Preply, for instance. We created a new line for B2B customers. So, Preply sells fundamentally online language classes, okay, with a
yeah,
tutor, one-to-one classes. Okay, that's what Preply does. When we started selling those to companies, there is a new element. The client is the company, and their employees are the users. So the client wanted to be aware of how much their user were adopting, right? How many classes they were taking, are we getting a good traction in my company? And so we built a data product for them. So we built a dashboard embedded in the Preplis product,
right,
so that we could give them this visibility. So these are your employees, and these employees, this is the frequency at which they're studied, this is the amount of credit that they use, this is the
yeah,
amount of lessons that they've left, and so on and so forth. And we did that on top of the Looker platform. So all of this data was 100% governed. That was the difference.
yeah,
Basically, the Preply look and feel, would have a dashboard with Preply look and feel. It would be like developed in a house, like a front end that would return this data. But then under the hood, this front end was making calls to the semantic layer, right? And the semantic layer was returning the data. But this means that these clients, they would look at the very same KPIs that us as a business would look at. So we would achieve like a single source of truth, not only within our company, but across the company and the customers. And this is spectacular. This is super exciting, I think. But do not remember seeing any other case, or at least to my limited knowledge, I didn't see any other case of companies doing that. So I think there's a
mm,
lot of potential for these technologies and the semantic layer, but it still needs to pick up, still
yeah,
needs to gain the traction it needs.
yeah. No, very interesting. I think we could talk about this for a long time. I think, would love to end in sort of something which, I think is a topic which we are increasingly seeing more awareness to be built on. We're about to do a sort of a small user conference on this topic. But what piece of advice would you have to someone in your shoes who is sort of joining a new role, to go lead a data initiative at a new venture? What is one piece of advice which could be relevant for a new data leader,
Mm,
as they start at a new firm?
yeah, for me, and it was the same in my experience, seek out advice for people who have done it before.
Yeah.
That would be the main of it. Can
And
be,
what
there's a
what's
lot
that
of
one
people
piece
will
of
pop
ad-
up.
what's that one piece of advice you would give if like someone was speaking to you? Is there one thing, is there like in your first 30 days, here's one thing you absolutely should do?
Yeah, best practices, best practices, best practices. Like the BI problem is a problem that is like 20, 30 years old. Like
Yeah,
virtually every tech company in the world had a BI problem. A lot of extremely smart people look into it over and over
yeah,
and over and over. And they
yeah,
figured what's the best solution, what's the
yeah,
best way of doing things. And this way of doing things is documented and out there, but
yeah,
people just don't bother uh, to collect this set of these practices and implement them. And so they end up like 3 years later with data infrastructure and data governance that does not scale, having to call somebody like me to
yeah,
scrap it all and restart again, which is fantastic, yeah, because I make a living out of this. But from your
yeah,
perspective,
yeah,
I mean, it wouldn't be awesome if you didn't have to. You just like, build something to scale
yeah,
right off the bat, like the first
yeah,
time around. So that this
yeah.
is when I'm consulting, this is the kind of value that I try to bring to my clients. This, let's do it right the first time around. It's not difficult. You only need
I
somebody
love
to
it.
tell you.
Amazing. Alessandro, thank you so much for your wisdom. Been a pleasure to have you in the show, and I'm sure our listeners are getting a lot out of this. Thank you so much.
Really, so hope. Thank you for having me.
Of
Have a great
course.
day, Thomas.